have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
The chamber pressure looks good.
Toggling up. Roger roll, Atlantis.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight down speed off. Bring in, let's speed off. Off.
Yikes. You bet.
Okay.
We don't need any more of these.
Good afternoon, everybody. You are taking a look live at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station as SpaceX get ready to launch another batch of Starlink satellites. This is Starlink mission 5-10. We have just been given the go for fueling, and we are now about 35 minutes away from liftoff. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be hosting the stream for you today, and joining me on comms is Adrian Bile. Adrian, how's it going?
Doing absolutely fantastic, especially if I'm with you on commentary, because I know it will be a pun-heavy stream for sure.
Absolutely. You and me together seems to be the dangerous combo now. And appreciate all the 5x5s coming in chat, meaning you can hear us. And joining us from the field is Julia Bergeron. Julia, how's it going?
I'm not sure if we
I
copy Julia right now.
Yeah. All right. We also have a few other people out in the field. We have Thomas Berghart, who will be out there in the field helping with cameras, along with Max Evans, who is one of our new members here at NSF. And of course, the man... Oh, there's Julia.
Hey, hi, hello there, everyone. Sorry about that moment of communication, confusion. But hi, I am here out in the field with y'all.
All right. And then, as I was just about to mention, the man who's in charge of pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and getting those photons to you is Patrick tonight. How's it going? So a reminder, you can ask us questions at any time. You can tag us at NASASpaceflight, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible. And a reminder, you can watch 2 streams at once right now, as there is also the Booster 7 lift going on simultaneously. So if you got 2 screens, you can pop us both up. In the meantime, though, let's start with Adrian to help tell us a little bit about what this mission is and what we can expect. Adrian?
Absolutely sure. Yeah, it's the Starlink Group 5-10 mission, which will lift 56 Starlink V1.5 satellites into low Earth orbit. A special point out here, the version is, this is not a version 2 launch or something like that. This is the older version 1.5, hence the higher satellite number. Yeah, it's launching from Slick 40 on a relatively new booster, with B1077 only going for a 4th flight today, which at this point feels like it's a very young booster. And yeah, overall it's a usual Group 5 Starlink mission, which hopefully will end with a booster landing on, just read the instruction, about 660 kilometers downrange. My god, I can talk today.
That's alright. I mean, you've been talking a while between all the streams going on here, so it's all good. Now, for this particular mission, there was some concern about weather originally. Julia, what is the weather like out there currently?
Well, currently, I would say windy. Windy is the theme of the day. It's windy and a bit hazy, more than likely due to that seawater kicking up in the air today.
Yeah, it's something that we're keeping an eye on, as well as the teams over at SpaceX and the 45th Weather Squadron. I believe it was a 60% chance of go at their most recent weather update, which was earlier in the day. But they are, as we mentioned, proceeding with fueling at this time, which is the filling of, or I should say propellant load, excuse me. So that includes the liquid oxygen and the RP1, which is a special refined form of kerosene. As Adrian was mentioning, this is the 4th flight of this booster, previously carrying Crew 5, GPS-3, SV-06, and Inmarsat I-6F2. Boy, they really like the letters and initials for this booster, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely a booster that is not easy to recap on the launch manifest, I would say.
Yeah, it's a fun one to try and say 5 times fast.
Is that a new
So-
game? Like, say your favorite booster launch manifest 5 times in a row?
Yeah, but I'm worried if you do that, a magic Elon will appear in your mirror. Isn't that the thing?
I mean, it's better than a magic booster appearing in my mirror because I feel like there's not enough space in my bathroom to have like a whole booster in there. So there we go.
Anyway, so I know you kind of touched on this a bit, but we actually have a question here from Musical Wolves. Are these Starlinks for replacing the V2 satellites that were lost? So can you explain a little bit about what we're talking about of Gen 2 versus V2 and all of that?
Sure. So V2 is the newer generation. They are small. They're smaller. They are bigger. They have more capacity. They have updated thrusters. It's basically a new iteration of Starlink. They started launching these. These have some troubles now, and they are testing what exactly is going on. Then Elon confirmed that they are working on testing some of them, deorbit some of them with the first launch. So that's what they are doing right now with V2. This is V1.5, which is going to the 5th shell. The new V2s were going to the 6th shell, so they are not like replacing them. They are going to the 5th shell with the 10th, 10th plant inclination. I don't know how to say it. And this is not a replacement. This is a planned launch that just happened to be now.
Yeah, I think the term is iteration that you were looking for.
There we go. Thank you.
Close enough, no problem. We do want to thank some people that are supporting here via Super Chats. Ben Sharp, thank you very much for becoming a Pad Rat member. And Brent Dean, thank you for becoming a Red Team member, as well as Cody Ruthko joining as a Red Team member. Jim Cavett, always a name we like seeing, gifting a Red Team membership. Thank you very much for that. And Alan Stoddard coming in with the Capcom membership, which a reminder, Capcom and above, not only do you get the same perks as the Red Team members, you also get access to our NSF Discord, where you can talk with us about anything from space to sports. Ooh, I like the alliteration there.
That's a cool tagline. We need to save that. From space to sports.
Yeah. So, Julia, as we know, this is going to be a booster landing downrange. What exactly do we expect to see during these booster landings once we get to that first stage separation?
During a booster landing, well, first of all, you will not see it return to Cape, correct?
That is
Just want
correct.
to make sure everybody knows that's kind of a treat around here, and we went through a streak of those earlier in the year. As you see it go downrange, we're actually going to the southeast this time, not a direct south trajectory, but southeast. As far as visibility goes, if you are anywhere pretty much in Central Florida or the East Coast, south of here, you should get a good view of that through stage separation. And then it'll land on, just read the instructions drone ship, where it'll be safed, and then they will secure it with the octograbber to bring it back to Port Canaveral.
All right, yeah, they are getting fast with these booster turnarounds now, too, with just how quickly we've already seen them come back into port, unload, and the next one's out and ready to go.
Yeah, I just
And
want
I
to
would
point
say,
out. Oh, good.
I was just going to say, in our views of Port Canaveral, there is still a booster vertical, and I do believe the wind today would have been a factor in that still remaining vertical. Otherwise, that would normally already be back on base and ready to get processed again.
That is a good point. Yeah, it's the wind constraints are just for launch, but also for ground operations too.
Just
All
want to
right.
point out here in terms of cadence, we are talking about number 21 of SpaceX launch this year, which ties the whole year of 2018 of SpaceX. So they are already in like chasing through how much they launched in like previous years, and we are at the end of March.
As a local, I'm just going to say how bonkers that is, because I remember when there was only 21 launches in a year, and the pace has picked up really fast. So look for an NSF team to be really, really busy this year, right, Alex?
Yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, look at this right now. We have 2 streams running right now with all hands on deck and everybody involved. It's kind of crazy.
It's very crazy. Yeah, I remember the Space Coast for a while appeared like deserted, and there would be maybe a few launches a year. It's so great to see the resurgence and more launches, more better.
Hey,
Um,
Alex, can I
Hey, Dan.
just slide in a really quick thank you to our members and all of our viewers and those who support us on our social media platforms? Because without you, there would be no reason for us to come out here. So I want to thank you personally for making that possible.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think all of us agree that is beyond words of how much your support helps us in allowing us to bring you, like we mentioned, 2 streams at once. So as we're getting close to T-minus 24 minutes and counting, let's take a look at the timeline of events here of where we've seen so far and what we can expect to come. So as we mentioned, the propellant loaded started about T-minus 35 minutes until liftoff. That's when they started loading the RP-1 and liquid oxygen into the first stage. We will know that the RP-1 loading is complete by the famous T-minus 20-minute vent, or 20 minutes and 20 seconds technically, but no one likes to remember 2020. It was a rough year. That will be followed 4 minutes later when the venting stops. That will indicate that stage 2 liquid oxygen, or loxygen as Thomas coined it, loading will begin. Before the engine chill down about T-minus 7 minutes. All of the fuels should wrap up at about T-minus 6 minutes for the first stage and 2 minutes for the second stage ahead of launch. Again, a reminder, you can tag us at NASASpaceflight with some of your questions. For example, Chris W. asking here, when is the next RTLS launch?
That's a good question. I don't actually have fully in my mind right now.
I can tell you the next
Let-
one, if you're counting Vandenberg, is tomorrow.
Yeah, at the Cape? I'm
Wouldn't
not
that
right
be
now
a
wondering.
heavy launch?
That would be
No.
Falcon Heavy, Viasat 3, right?
Is
No, that
everything
one's fully
coming back to
expendable.
base this time?
You're
No.
right, that is a fully expendable mission. That is
Well,
actually
that
a
makes me
really good
cry.
question.
And the Echo Star mission has so far not known recovery, so that's also that's a good question. That's a question I usually would throw to Alex in the back channel, but he is on the booster stream right now.
Yeah. It's something that we'll definitely keep an eye on, though.
I will have a quick look. I know. I think.
I mean-
based on. No, we'll see. I will. If I have an answer, I will make. I will give it to you later.
Whomever it was that asked that question, thank you so much for scrambling the brain of the people that I know usually have the answer right on the tip of their tongue. Thank you.
By the way, I'm seeing that some people are saying that they can't see the stream, so if you can, just let us know if you with a 5x5 here. Yeah, I'm checking. I see people saying that it's working. Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm seeing 5x5s here. Good. Just wanted to make sure of that, especially as we get close to the favorite T-minus 20-minute event. I did see a question earlier from David asking, are those radar domes to the left? I know that we had a little confusion on the last one, but I believe we're talking about those 2 ball-shaped structures to the left of the rocket there. We know what those are, Julia?
I believe those are radar domes. I believe the big building to the left of the pad is the payload processing facility, or the current payload processing facility for SpaceX. And I believe those were a part of it. And they may even date back almost as far as the ITL Causeway. But I do believe, yes, radar domes is the correct answer.
Awesome. And then there are other fuel tanks around there too, right? I know we had talked about there's a domed one. I believe it's for the Loxygen.
Loxygen is quite the possibility. Yes, like I said, that is a payload processing facility. So multiple payloads are being processed at the same time in that building. And tanks are there to supply whatever the needs are for those payloads as they're being encapsulated.
Here we go. 20 minutes.
There it is. Favorite view. Well, my favorite view, DOS's, is an empty pad. So I'll go with mine, which is the T-minus 20-minute vent here. Again, that is an indication that they are now preparing for the stage 2 LOX load to begin. That is also the indication that the RP-1 has, which is rocket propellant 1, again, a refined form of kerosene, is completely loaded up into that second stage. And again, this is completely normal and expected as they purge the lines to get ready for LOX load in that second stage. While we're doing that, getting a few more questions from here, tagging us at NASASpaceflight. Here's a very interesting question, and I think we all know the answer to this one. Michael Rivera asking, do you think SpaceX or NASA will reach the moon first? And I believe the answer is both, right, Adrian?
Oh, absolutely. I go with both. It will be probably the Artemis. Okay, you can now get technical. Because there is a demo mission that is also planned in part of this lunar landing contract, the HLS contract. So, but that's also a NASA mission. So it will probably be either on that, or if you define like with people, then it would be Artemis 3, and that also involves SpaceX and NASA. So it will probably be the answer. It will be a SpaceX vehicle on a NASA mission.
Exactly. So that's part of the whole HLS program, is that SpaceX is the lander working with NASA. So I think it's safe to say both at the same time. All right. While we're talking about the timeline of pre-fueling, let's take a look at what we can expect after liftoff as well, which is now just about 18 minutes from now. So there's your timeline of the ascent going up into orbit, where we get the fantastic sounds coming from our team out in the field. That is followed by the first stage separation, which will then do a flip maneuver. It's not the full landing boost back burn that we kind of expect for RTLS, but it will flip itself around before deploying the grid fins and performing the first entry burn using 3 of those Merlin 1D engines, as then will use fire to basically slow itself down, guiding itself hopefully to the landing on top of the drone ship. Just read the instructions, southeast of the launch pad. Let's see, we've got a couple more questions here. Here's one from Chris Pancook asking, do we know what area these satellites will provide coverage to? And I think a better question is kind of the shell that they're going into, right?
Yeah, there is no. So these are not like, for example, just as a history part here. Older satellite constellations for internet usually used like geostationary satellites. These are actually like directed to a certain area. With these LEO satellites, they will change their position. It's not like they are fixed over one position. They will fly over a lot of areas. With this, I'm right now trying to find the exact inclination, just to have like the exact numbers. But they will be over Europe. They will be over the US. They will be over Asia. They are going to a 43 inclination. So that means it's hard to find like continents where they won't go over. They will cover most of the world.
Exactly. That whole laser point-to-point communication is a big factor in that you could just have them basically in a grid and keep bouncing them back and forth until finally you get to the destination, which could be almost anywhere in the world as long as you've got a Starlink dish.
Also, shoutouts to Alex, who's right now on the other stream and giving us a record for this stream. Huge shout out to Alex for doing that. This is the 8th launch of the month for SpaceX, which is a record in a calendar month, and they have another 9th one planned for tomorrow.
No rest for the weary, right?
Yeah, what a month.
Yeah, fun fact, this will also be their 219th overall launch. So, aiming also for the 142nd drone ship landing, 182nd landing and recovery of a booster overall, and they are still over 100 launches in a row with successful landings. And yeah, all of that before we still have one more before the end of the month too, which we mentioned is a Falcon 9 out of Vandenberg that is scheduled 10:30ish Eastern, 7:30ish local time, which will be carrying the Tranche 0 Flight 1. A lot of stuff still coming up.
It's so much, but it's cool. Like it's so cool to be like a space journalist right now, right? And or a space photographer, anybody that covers these, because you have so much to talk about, so much to do, and you can basically talk to anybody every day and be like, yeah, today this is happening.
Yeah, and I mean to keep up with all of this too, the fact that they're also recovering the payload fairings with the ships Bob and Doug and all of that, there's a lot. While I have you, Julia, since you're down to the port quite often, what are all these marine assets, and are they all able to keep up with this flight rate?
That's actually a really good question because with the current flight rate, there isn't very much downtime to do maintenance. So one thing you do have to think about with the drone ships is that deck. The deck from the heating as the booster comes down and then the rapid cooling. That would be a concern going forward. But I noticed as soon as they offloaded in port, the last return, they already started doing work probably under the deck on, of course I still, no, wait, oh man. Of course I still love yous over on the other coast. We've got a shortfall of gravitas in port right now. And you could see the way the draft was. And it appears they were already planning maintenance in that bit of time they had. So it looks like we're going to do bits of maintenance in between. So hopefully we can avoid larger maintenance. And all of that is also dependent on boosters coming in for their landing at a rate of speed that is expected, correct? So these are the only assets we have, and we have to keep them healthy in between every launch.
Exactly.
And some of these assets, like, what are they made of? Are they like metal or are they wood? Some parts of it.
I do believe that it is a reinforced metal deck. So it's not your average barge, although it is a barge. You know, I hate to tell everybody, it is a converted barge that happens to be autonomous, but it's not your average barge that goes upon the ocean. It is heavily reinforced below and above deck.
Yeah, and in terms of a wooden deck, I mean, it's kind of like what they did with aircraft carriers, how they started with the wooden flight deck and then switched to something stronger that could take the beating. So, can confirm from Gav, who is our expert over at FleetCam, saying it is not wood.
It would be a giant bonfire if it were wood, y'all. Just saying.
That is true. I want to take a quick second here to thank a few more people for helping to support this stream. Bill Moore, thank you very much for the support without a message, but we still appreciate it. The one who is Matt, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Innerspace, thank you for becoming a PadRat member, along with Mike Nowak. And Luca, thank you as well for becoming a Red Team member. Now, we are about 11 and a half minutes away from the launch of the Starlink 5-10 satellites, which there are 56 of them currently on board this mission. Here's an interesting question, and I'll see what both of you guys think about this. Robbie Rob asking, in upcoming missions, we see more and more old boosters expended. So will SpaceX eventually just expend fleet leaders because they are too old, or will they try and reach higher numbers? And I'll throw that, Adrian, to you first.
Well, it's there's two kind of boosters they can expend. A lot of expended booster we will see are the Falcon Heavy Center Cores, which are not your normal booster. Falcon Heavy Center Cores are heavily reinforced boosters because they need to also have the load of the two side boosters. So the side boosters of Falcon Heavy are actually normal Falcon 9 boosters. The center core is not. So a lot of these expanded things are basically just planned expanded center cores. For the expanded Falcon 9s, well, if you have a mission that demands that mission profile, I think, yes, it would make sense to send a fleet leader. However, most of these high trajectory, high energetic orbit missions usually also involve a very expensive payload. And then there's the question, is the customer fine with a booster that is already the fleet leader? Because that's also the mission where you most likely would find out that a part maybe has reached its life limit. So yeah, it's a bit of a trickery, I would say.
Yeah, what do you think, Julia?
You know what I think that SpaceX is going to continue to test their flight leaders on Starlink missions, reducing the risk for customers and putting that testing risk on themselves. So if we see one expended, it might be on maybe a future Starlink that needs a higher energy boost, maybe one of our southern polar trajectories, something along those lines. But I don't even know if they'd ask a customer to take one of these fleet leaders quite yet.
Yeah, my thought is the same thing, that they'll keep pushing and pushing these older ones, most likely though on Starlink missions where they are the customer and if something goes wrong, it's not the worst thing that could happen. Because right now I think the leader is tied at 15 flights each.
And I'm not even going to lie, I honestly didn't know for sure if we'd ever get to the point where we'd have multiple fleet leaders at 15. So color me impressed and color me a sooty booster.
I was gonna say, what color do you want to be? Red, blue? Sorry, I had to. Terrible joke. Well, anyway, we were talking before about the top of the deck, right? If it's wood or if it's metal. It is not wood, it is likely metal, but if you want something metal for your house, you can do so at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. We have some fantastic metal prints, including ones all about Falcon 9 and the RTLS landings. Like you see there, that arc is one of my favorites. I absolutely love that shot. So you can get all of these metal prints, taking a look at everything going on here, as well as stuff going down at Starbase. And again, those are at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. But if you want to rep your love for Falcon 9, like on this screen, we still have our launch entry landing shirts, which explains how many boosters and how many engines and which ones exactly are being used during those returns down to the barge and even to land. So that's all at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. And a reminder, all of those do come with our brand new logo on it as well.
That was the most masterful segue I've ever heard for a transition.
Wow, thank you. And I'm not even writing on a segue right now.
Oh, bad dad joke, bad.
I'm sorry, that was terrible.
I'm in pain.
I know, I should have left it at the good one, right?
Yeah, I was just saying you how I found that a nice one, and now you're like, nope, not letting that stand.
No, sorry, definitely not letting it stand, especially because the metal print wouldn't stand very well, but they do come with mounting brackets.
Fire!
And here's little old me in the corner just hoping that our booster stands on the drone ship after it lands.
Yeah. I know we're getting closer to launch here, so I'm going to put one more question over to you, Julia, while we have it. And this is a great question from Wendy Hughes asking, how close are those cars to the pad, and how can workers be close to the launch pad if they actually are there? And I think some of it's a bit of an optical illusion. So, like, where are you in comparison? And about those cars, they're still pretty far away, right?
Well, those cars actually aren't all that far from me, so that means they're far enough from the pad. I do believe they are heading to the absolute cutoff line, which is where folks like the red team would be, who are basically your pad ninjas that are there in case of an abort or an emergency situation. But yes, there is lens compression. I'm not going to lie to you. They are literally just across the pond from us. They are not too close.
Yeah, so it's not a worry. It's definitely a bit of an optical illusion with the camera, in that things in front of camera may appear larger than they actually are, or closer, or farther.
And the road that they're on, honestly, it leads out toward Launch Complex 41 as well. So all the same, that would be much farther away in comparison to where we are.
Yep, everyone is keeping safe so that the range remains green, which, as at this point, it appears it does. So we are down past the T-minus 6 minute mark, which is one of our major milestones here on our timeline. We had passed the engine chill, which is preparing those 9 Merlin 1D engines for the extreme heat that they are going to experience, essentially, once they ignite at T-minus 3 seconds. So while we're at this 5 minute mark, Julia, I'm going to let you go and enjoy the launch. So have fun, and can't wait to report back to see what you think.
Thank you, Sawyer. I'll see you after lunch.
All right. So here's that timeline that I was just mentioning. So the RP1 load is complete. The next thing that we'll keep an eye out for in the next few seconds is the strongback retract, which you can kind of see already. Those clamps at the top of the rocket that were wrapped right around the fairing are now opening. So as a result, the strongback will now lean back ever so slightly. We're talking about a degree, possibly even less than that. But it will do a big throwback once it gets to T-minus 0. And no, that doesn't mean it's going to start wearing bell bottoms and peace signs, but it will throw it back all the way to the ground so that it doesn't get hit. In the meantime, those lines that are feeding the rocket are still connected. And the lowering should be underway now based off of what they're saying on their stream. Now, there's a look at the very sooty fairings on top, and these appear to be reflown fairings. So how are they actually retrieved and then reflown, Adrian?
Yeah, there was a time when SpaceX thought they need to catch these, and they had big nets to try to catch these. But at some point, they really just decided to let them splash down and fish them out of the ocean, and then they clean them, refurbish them, and fly them again. So yeah, it's basically they're just swimming in the ocean, and then they scoop them out and fly them again. It's a really interesting, like it's surprisingly simple if you say it like that. Of course, there's a lot of factors involved in that to make sure the electronics still work and everything, because these fairings are not trivial. They're not just bare material. There's also some technical parts in this involved. So yeah. It's quite an interesting process, but at this point, they're really getting used to reusing these fairings. And I guess the more reusability, the better.
More reusability, more better. Yes, exactly. I just have to say, last time I was at the Cape, I was getting ready to go to one of the media meetup points, and the cars were completely stopped. I was like, why are they all stopped? Because they were moving a fairing. So they're pretty big. It's amazing to see them parachute down and return when you see how large they actually are in person. And these are the 5-meter fairings.
Yeah, that's it's crazy how big everything is regarding Falcon 9, because it looks so small sometimes, but it's really a giant rocket. Of course, we are now in the age of even more giant rockets, such as Starship, SLS, and Falcon Heavy. But Falcon 9 is not small. It's a really, really big rocket.
That it is, exactly. We are now at T-minus 2 minutes or so and counting. Everything appears to be going as planned up to this point. The next major milestones coming up will be that Falcon 9 will be in startup, which is at T-minus 1 minute, meaning the onboard computers will take over control of all final pre-launch checks, and all of the propellant tanks will be pressurized to flight pressure at that time. Then we'll be waiting for the go from the launch director at about T-minus 45 seconds, and then hoping for engine ignition at T-minus 3 seconds, which we'll be able to see by indication of a big green flash, which is the T-tab that is used to ignite the engines firing.
There's the final purge of the lines before liftoff to make sure that there's no left RP1 or left locks in these lines when there's a rocket night next to it. So this is also very normal and very good to see at this point as they're getting ready to launch this Starlink mission.
And I believe they actually use nitrogen to purge those lines.
Yeah, which is an inert, so you're making sure there's nothing igniting.
Exactly. At this point, Falcon 9 is in startup. So again, as I mentioned, the onboard computers are now running the countdown. So if they need to abort or hold for any reason, it would be handled by the rocket, not by someone in Launch Control Center.
Which is a good thing, right? Because at this point, really, I wouldn't want to be the one that pushes a button to abort this. I trust computers with millions of data and sensors probably to take over that part for me.
Exactly. And they are go for launch as we hit T-minus 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Again, a reminder,
love
keep an
how
eye at the bottom for that green flash.
If it's still attached to the ground.
All right, about 10 seconds. Standing by for, there's the Rainbirds at the bottom. Standing by for ignition. We have ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9 carrying Starlink 5-10. And we see and are ready to hear you 5x5. Let's listen to the sound. Oh, that sound never gets old, and especially with such a clear-looking sky. Gives you a real feel of how fast that thing is going, as we are T plus 1 minute and 5 seconds into flight. Next up will be max Q, which it looks like it's passing through right now. That is when the most aerodynamic stresses are placed on the vehicle. And it is now going faster than the speed of sound as it passes through max Q.
Always cool to see. It will never get boring to see a Falcon 9 fly.
Never.
Some people are like, at this point, oh, it's just another Falcon 9. But it's still cool.
Yeah. Trajectory so far is being reported as nominal. You can see as the atmosphere gets thinner, you can see the plume expanding underneath the engines. A reminder, that is not the engines doing anything, it is just the thinner atmosphere doesn't compress the 9 engine as much, and you can see basically every single engine at that point. Again, next up will be a few events in quick succession. That will be the MECO, or main engine cutoff, followed by the 2 stages separating, and then second stage ignition, and a few seconds after that, payload fairing deploy. So a lot to come, and that should all be starting in about the next 10 seconds. We're getting some really good views, both from our manual tracking and our remote tracking. Alright, here we go. Standing by for MECO. And we have main engine cutoff. There we go, the first stage has separated away. And on the right, we should be seeing the second stage MVAC engine igniting. And there we go, we have SAS-1.
It's all looking good so far. That's what we want to see.
Exactly, and there goes the fairing halves falling away as well, which, as we mentioned, will parachute down to be scooped up out of the water and be used again. Now, the first stage is going to be doing its flip, which you can see on the left side there, and then the right side is going to continue to orbit. My favorite part of this is the telemetry data that you can see on the bottom of the screen from SpaceX. Where the first stage, speed's slowing, but the altitude's still climbing.
I always love also to talk a bit about the second stage, because we talk a lot about these boosters and how much they fly and how much they're getting reused. But the achievement that SpaceX also has managed to do is producing so many second stages and making them ready and testing them and basically having one ready every 4 to 5, 6 days at this point, which is like an unprecedented rocket cadence. That's so much work to have such a production line turning out so many upper stages.
Exactly. I mean, they're even having to change some of the designs of the MVAC so that they can manufacture those quicker to keep up with those second stages.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy production line, and it's really cool to see how reliable they're just working.
At about 4.5 minutes into flight, you can see on the bottom left, it is nearing the top of its altitude, the apogee, at which point it will then start dropping and work on its way towards returning to the drone ship. Just read the instructions. You can see that speed slowly climbing as it re-enters, and the little thrust pulses that are helping to navigate it. We do have those grid fins that are out as well. Those will help steer more, though, once they get into the thicker atmosphere. And amazingly, Stage 2 already at over 11,000 kilometers per hour, and that's about halfway to where it needs to be for its initial orbit.
So crazy how fast these are.
Exactly. We're hearing that all vehicles, both of them, are continuing to follow a nominal trajectory, meaning they are right on target up to this point. So the next major event with the first stage will be the entry burn, of which 3 of those Merlin 1D engines will relight, and that burn will last about 29 seconds, if my math is correct. Or, excuse me, 19. No. Brain just stopped working. It'll start at about 6:12 into flight and finish at 6:31. That's why I went to school for journalism, not math. I'm sure Chad will help correct me on that too.
Love the multicolor of the ocean sometimes based on how deep it is and how clear the water is at that point. Like sometimes it's really cool to see how it looks like different colors to islands.
Just this view in general.
Yeah, it's look. By the way, it's curved.
Oh boy! All right, here we go. Coming up on the first entry burn, which will last a number of seconds.
And number of seconds.
And keep an eye when that happens, especially on the data in the bottom left. There it goes at how quickly it's going to start slowing down. And with that burn, the Stage 1 flight termination system is safed, which is a good thing. And there we go. Again, as we mentioned, it's basically using fire to slow itself down, flying through its own fire, which, as a result, is also how the boosters get super sooty. The fact that they are flying through the kerosene, which is carbon-based, all that burn-off basically ending up on the booster itself. And it does add weight, but it's a negligible amount. So, Julia, do we have you on stream while we're waiting for the landing burn? What'd you think?
Oh my gosh, you absolutely do have me on stream. I was just watching all the cars that y'all saw going toward the pad, exiting the pad area because we had a successful launch and it sounded amazing. Hey, chat, what did you think of the crackles today?
Ooh, that sounded like a good crackle to me. I think they
Oh, it
thought so
was
too.
a good crackle. And we heard it a good, 4 to 5 minutes into flight, even though we no longer could see it. We could still hear pops and crackles occasionally.
Unbelievable. Oh, love those. All right, first stage is now below the speed of sound once again, and we will stand by for the landing burn to begin in just a couple of seconds here. I love how it just looks like clear blue water, and all of a sudden there'll just be a drone ship popping out of nowhere.
Yep. I think you can see through the left grid fin right
yes you can. There we go. We have that ignition of the single Merlin 1D engine. It is steering itself using those grid fins. And Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance all while this is going on. Landing leg deploy. And touchdown. Landing confirmed. Another successful booster landing for SpaceX, as this one now gets its Dash 4. Its 4th flight done, going on to Dash 5 now.
Yep, it leveled up to level 5.
5 stars for that landing. And at that point, we also have a second engine cutoff. And we get DAS's favorite view. You get the empty launch pad. I know everyone loves to see that as the second stage shuts down into what is being called a nominal orbit, meaning it's exactly where it needs to be. So a reminder of things that will continue to happen afterwards. It will do a second burn at about 55 minutes into flight, and then it will deploy those satellites about an hour and 4 minutes into flight. Still a lot of goodies to come. I do want to hit a few final super chats here that we got. Tyrannus Cygnus, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. And Therion, thank you for using our tip feature, wishing us a happy 4th anniversary of NSF on YouTube, which that is our unbelievably 4 years to this day, and we're celebrating it by doing 2 live streams. So first, I want to thank the people that joined us here today. I'm just going to run down the line really quickly. Thank you very much, Adrian, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Julia, for joining us from the field.
It's been a pleasure to join you all.
And a big thanks to Thomas Berghardt and Max Evans, who are out in the field, who helped get that all to us, to these beautiful views. Thank you for that. And we've got Patrick behind the scenes here as well, who helped pull the levers and push the buttons for this stream. I know we went through that kind of quickly, but a huge thank you to them. And most importantly, thank you to you, the viewer, for watching and commenting and all of the support. It makes all of this worth it. We love doing it. So, hey, what do you know? We've got another stream that we can send you guys to that is live. So let's send you over now to the team covering the Booster 7 lift down at Boca Chica. And thank you, nerds, for watching this stream from Florida.